I pulled the dusty cardboard box from the highest shelf in my son Michael's old bedroom, the one he hadn't slept in for over a decade. My fingers trembled as I lifted the flaps, sending a cloud of motes dancing in the weak attic light. Inside, beneath yellowed baseball cards and a stack of faded concert tees, I found them. A sheaf of crayon drawings on brittle construction paper. They were Leo's, my grandson, made when he was just 5 years old. The first few were typical: lopsided suns, stick figure families. Then my breath caught. One depicted a man with Michael's square jaw and dark hair, pulling a small, crying boy into a car. The next showed the same boy in a small, windowless room. The details were chillingly precise, down to the license plate number I remembered police had dismissed as a child's fantasy. Leo had drawn his own kidnapping, and the monster was his father. My son. The police had closed the case years ago, calling it a runaway or worse, but I never believed it. Now I had the truth in my hands, and it was uglier than I ever imagined. I had to know if these drawings were a memory or a prophecy fulfilled. Knowing the truth could shatter what was left of my family, but not knowing had already broken me. I smoothed the paper on my knee, the waxy scent of crayon a ghost from the past. I needed to verify this, to find a connection to the official report I'd kept in a filing cabinet downstairs. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Just as I stood, the floorboard in the hall creaked. I froze, clutching the drawings to my chest. Michael wasn't due back from his business trip for 2 more days. The footsteps paused outside the door. Then the knob began to turn. I shoved the drawings under a loose floorboard just as the attic door swung open. Michael stood there, his suitcase in hand, his face a mask of casual curiosity. "Mum, what are you doing up here? I got back early?" His voice was smooth, too calm. I forced a smile, my palms slick with sweat. "Just some spring cleaning, dear. You know how it piles up." He nodded, but his eyes scanned the room, lingering on the open box. I needed to get out of there, to somewhere I could think. I needed to compare those drawings with the missing persons file to see if the details aligned. I was gripped by the gnawing fear that my own son was a stranger, a monster I had raised. He stepped further in, his presence shrinking the room. "Find anything interesting?" he asked, picking up an old toy car from the box. I shook my head, my throat tight. "Just memories." I edged toward the door, but he moved to block it slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough to make my skin crawl. "You look pale, Mom. Maybe you should rest." It was a gentle command, not a suggestion. I nodded and slipped past him, feeling his gaze on my back all the way down the stairs. In the kitchen, I pretended to make tea, my hands shaking so badly I sloshed hot water on the counter. I had to see that file. It was in the basement, in a locked, fireproof box. As I fumbled for the key, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Forgot to mention, I'm having a security system installed tomorrow. Whole house, just to be safe." The timing couldn't be a coincidence. He was boxing me in. I unlocked the box and pulled out Leo's file, the thick manila folder, a tangible weight of years of grief. I spread the drawings next to the police report. The sketch of the car matched the description of a vehicle seen near the park that day, a detail never released to the public. My blood ran cold. Leo had been trying to tell us all along, and Michael knew I was getting close. I spent the night cross-referencing every detail from the drawings with the case file at the small desk in my basement. The room Leo drew had floral wallpaper, something I'd never seen in our homes. I remembered a rental property Michael had briefly owned around the time Leo vanished, a small house on Elm Street. I had to see it. This quest was costing me my sanity. Every rustle of the house settling sounded like Michael's footsteps. He was downstairs now, watching a game, but I felt his awareness like a physical pressure. I called an old friend from the neighborhood, Martha, pretending I needed advice on selling property. Casually, I asked if she remembered that house on Elm. "Oh, the one with the ugly roses on the walls?" she said. "Michael sold it right after, didn't he?" My hand clenched around the phone. It was a match. I had to get inside that house. I told Michael I was going to the grocery store, a mundane errand to cover my tracks. He offered to come, but I insisted I needed air. Driving away, I checked the rearview mirror constantly, half expecting his truck to be following me. Elm Street was only a few miles away, a quiet, neglected lane. The house was there, looking sad and empty, a for sale sign swaying in the breeze. I parked down the block and approached on foot, my pulse thrumming in my ears. The back door was unlocked, sagging on its hinges. I slipped inside, the air thick with dust and decay. And then I saw it. The hallway was papered with faded pink roses, exactly like in Leo's drawing. I was in the right place. But as I moved toward the bedrooms, a floorboard creaked behind me. I wasn't alone. A shadow fell across the wall, and a voice I didn't recognize said, "Mrs. Gable? You shouldn't be here." I spun around, my heart in my throat. A man in a dark suit stood there, his expression unreadable. He wasn't police. He looked like private security. "This property is under surveillance," he said, stepping closer. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I stammered an apology about being a curious neighbor, but my mind raced. Michael had this place watched. Why? What was here that needed guarding? I needed to find proof that Leo had been held here, something the drawings hadn't shown. I was terrified by the realization that my son had orchestrated this, that he had resources and reach I never imagined. The man escorted me out, his grip firm on my elbow. As we reached the door, I glanced into a small room to the left. It was bare except for a single, small chair in the corner. On the floor beside it was a crumpled piece of red crayon paper, nearly hidden in the shadows. It was another drawing, similar to Leo's style. I couldn't grab it, not with him watching. Back in my car, I drove aimlessly, my thoughts a chaotic whirl. Michael was covering his tracks, and he knew I was digging. I needed that drawing. I called the real estate agent listed on the sign, posing as a potential buyer interested in a quick sale. I scheduled a viewing for tomorrow morning. It was a risk, but I had to get back inside. When I returned home, Michael was in the driveway, leaning against his car. "Find everything you needed, Mom?" he asked, his tone light, but his eyes hard. I nodded, forcing calm. "Just some milk and eggs?" He smiled, a thin, cold curve of his lips. "Good. Oh, and I cancelled that security system. Decided we don't need it after all." The sudden change unnerved me more than the original threat. He was playing with me, confident I couldn't win. As I walked inside, I saw it. On the kitchen table, where I'd left Leo's file, was a single, fresh drawing. A child's hand had sketched a woman who looked like me, with a big red X over her face. I stared at the drawing on my kitchen table, the crude X feeling like a target on my chest. Michael had been in my things, and he was warning me off. The audacity of it, leaving this in my own home. Now, I had to retrieve that drawing from the Elm Street house and connect it directly to Leo, to have tangible evidence that couldn't be explained away. The pretense between us was eroding. We were in a silent war, and the battlefield was my family's history. I couldn't wait for the real estate viewing. I had to go back tonight, under cover of darkness. I packed a small flashlight and gloves into my purse, my hands steady now with purpose. Michael was out for the evening, some business dinner he'd mentioned, but I didn't trust it. I drove to Elm Street after midnight, the moon hidden behind clouds. The house was dark, the for sale sign a pale ghost in the night. I picked the flimsy lock on the back door, the skill something I'd learned from a mystery novel years ago. Inside, the silence was heavy, oppressive. I moved quickly to the small room where I'd seen the drawing, my flashlight beam cutting through the dust. It was still there, under the chair. I smoothed it out. It showed the same room, but with a small figure huddled in a corner and words printed in shaky letters. Help me. It was Leo's handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. He had been here, and he'd left a message. My eyes filled with tears, but I wiped them away. This was proof. I tucked the drawing into my pocket and turned to leave. As I did, a car's headlights swept across the front window, illuminating the interior for a split second. I ducked behind the door, my breath held. The car stopped outside, and a door slammed. Peeking through a crack in the boards, I saw Michael get out of his truck, a grin set to his jaw, and he wasn't alone. Another man followed him, carrying a large, heavy-looking duffel bag. They were coming inside. I pressed myself against the rough wall behind the door, my heart hammering so loud I feared they'd hear it. Michael's voice echoed in the empty house, sharp and commanding. "Make it quick. I want this place cleaned out by dawn." The other man grunted in response, the sound of the duffel bag hitting the floor with a heavy thud. I needed to get out without them seeing me, to protect the drawing in my pocket and myself. If they discovered me, it would mean unthinkable things. My own son, a kidnapper, capable of anything. I edged along the wall, toward a narrow hallway I'd noticed earlier, my breaths shallow. Michael was talking about erasing traces and the old lady getting too close. His words confirmed my worst fears. Just as I reached the hallway, a floorboard groaned under my weight. I froze. "What was that?" the other man said. Michael's footsteps moved toward my hiding spot. "Probably just the house settling. Still, check it out." I slipped into a small closet, pulling the door almost shut, the smell of mothballs filling my nose. Through the crack, I saw the other man sweep his flashlight around the room I'd just left. He kicked the small chair, sending it skittering across the floor. "Nothing here." Michael's phone buzzed, and he answered, his tone shifting to false cheer. "Yes, Mom's fine. Just a little confused lately." He was talking about me, painting me as unstable. The call ended, and he sighed. "Let's bag everything and burn it. I should have done this years ago." They moved away, toward the front of the house. This was my chance. I crept out, heading for the back door, but my foot caught on something metal, a small, tarnished key, half hidden in the dust. I pocketed it instinctively. As I reached the door, a car engine roared to life outside, headlights flooding the yard. I ducked behind a bush, watching Michael's truck pull away, but the other man stayed behind, standing guard on the porch. I was trapped inside with him. Crouched in the shadows, I watched the man on the porch light a cigarette, his silhouette outlined against the dim glow. I had to get past him and back to my car, but he was blocking the only exit I could see. The key I'd found felt cold in my hand. What did it unlock? My mind raced. Was it for a locker? A storage unit? Something Michael used to hide evidence? The emotional toll was mounting. Every creak of the house felt like an accusation. I needed to find another way out. Maybe a window. I retreated deeper into the house, moving toward a bathroom I'd spotted earlier. The window there was small, but I might fit through. As I pushed the door open, a faint beeping sound started from the front of the house. The man on the porch cursed and stomped out his cigarette, heading inside. I slipped into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. The window was stuck, painted shut. I scrabbled at the frame, my nails breaking. The beeping grew louder. A security system? But Michael said he cancelled it. Footsteps approached the bathroom door. "Someone in there?" the man called, his voice gruff. I stayed silent, my back against the wall. The doorknob jiggled. "Open up!" He started pounding on the door, the wood shuddering. I looked around desperately and spotted a vent cover low on the wall. It was small, but maybe I could pry it off and hide in the crawl space. As I knelt, my knee knocked against something under the sink, a small, locked metal box. The key I'd found fit perfectly. Inside, nestled in faded cloth, was a child's toothbrush and a tiny, worn teddy bear I recognized as Leo's favorite. Proof he'd been here. The pounding stopped abruptly. "Forget it, it's just rats," the man muttered, his footsteps fading away. I let out a shaky breath, clutching the bear. But then I heard a new sound, the distinct click of the front door deadbolt engaging from the outside. He had locked me in. I was sealed inside the house, the silence now deafening. I had to find another exit before the man returned or Michael came back. The teddy bear in my pocket was a tangible piece of Leo, a reminder of what was at stake. I checked the bathroom window again, using the metal box to chip away at the paint until it gave way. I pushed it open, the cool night air a relief. The drop was about 6 feet into an overgrown bush. I climbed out, scraping my arm on the sill, and landed awkwardly in the mulch. My car was still down the block, but I couldn't risk going straight to it. I circled around the back, keeping to the shadows. As I neared the street, I saw the man wasn't on the porch anymore. His car was gone, but Michael's truck was now parked right behind mine. He was waiting for me. I ducked behind a neighbor's fence, my mind racing. I needed to get home without him following, to secure the evidence I had. I called a taxi from my phone, requesting a pickup a block over, pretending I was a disoriented senior who'd gotten lost on a walk. While I waited, I hid in an alley, the teddy bear clutched in my hand. The taxi arrived, and I slipped in, telling the driver to take a circuitous route home. When I got there, the house was dark. I let myself in quietly, expecting a confrontation, but it was empty. On the kitchen counter, next to the drawing with the X, was a note from Michael. "Had to leave town unexpectedly. Don't wait up." It was too convenient. I checked his room. His go-bag was gone. He was running. But why now? I went to my basement and added the teddy bear and the new drawing to the file. As I organized the papers, a photo fell out, one I'd forgotten, of Michael and a man I didn't recognize, taken years ago at a fair. The man was the one from the house tonight. On the back, in Michael's handwriting, was a name, Vince, and a phone number. I had a way to find his accomplice. But as I reached for my phone, it buzzed with an unknown number. A text lit up the screen. "Stop looking, or you'll regret it." They knew I was home. The threat in that text was clear, but it only hardened my resolve. I had to track down Vince and confront him, to piece together what happened to Leo. Using the number from the photo, I did a quick online search. It was still active, registered to a Vincent Miller in a town 50 miles away. I needed to go there today, before Michael could warn him. I lost my peace. Every car that passed the house made me jump. I packed the evidence into a small bag, along with some cash and a knife from the kitchen, a precaution I never thought I'd need. I drove to Vincent's address, a run-down apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. The place felt bleak, with peeling paint and scattered trash. I found his unit on the ground floor and knocked, my hand trembling. No answer. I tried the knob. It was unlocked. Pushing the door open, I stepped into a sparsely furnished room, the air stale with cigarette smoke. On a coffee table, amid empty beer bottles, was a stack of papers. I sifted through them, old bills, flyers, and then a folded map. I opened it. Certain locations were circled, including the Elm Street house and a remote cabin in the woods I remembered Michael mentioning once as a hunting retreat. Was that where Leo was taken? As I studied the map, a key turned in the lock. I ducked behind a sofa just as Vince walked in, talking on his phone. Yeah, she's getting too close. Mike says to lay low until he handles it. He tossed his keys on the table, right next to where I'd been standing. I don't like it, man. The old lady's persistent. He paced, his voice tense. Remember the kid? He never should have drawn those pictures. My blood ran cold. Vince knew about the drawings. He ended the call and headed for the kitchen, giving me a moment to slip out the door. I made it to my car, but as I started the engine, I saw Vince burst from his apartment, staring right at me. He pulled out his phone, making a call. I drove off, but in the rearview mirror, I noticed a dark sedan pull out from a side street and fall in behind me. It was following me. The dark sedan stayed 2 cars back, its presence a constant threat in my mirror. I had to lose them and get to safety. But where? I couldn't go home. It was the first place they'd look. I needed to reach the police with what I had. But after all these years, would they believe me? I drove toward the downtown precinct, taking random turns to shake the tail, but the sedan matched every move. At a red light, I fumbled for my phone to call 911, but my hands were shaking too badly. The light changed, and I accelerated, cutting through a parking garage to lose them. For a moment, I thought I'd succeeded. The sedan wasn't behind me. I pulled over in a busy shopping plaza, catching my breath. That's when I saw it. The cabin from the map was only an hour's drive north. If Leo had been there, maybe there was more evidence. I had to go now, before Michael or Vince could get there. I merged onto the highway, heading north, the bag of evidence on the passenger seat. The drive was a blur of trees and fading daylight. My mind replayed Leo's laughter, his small hand in mine. What had Michael done? The cabin was down a long dirt road, isolated and shrouded in pines. I parked a distance away and approached on foot, the crunch of leaves under my shoes the only sound. The place looked abandoned, windows boarded up. The front door was padlocked, but a side window was loose. I pried it open and climbed into the musty interior. Inside, it was a time capsule of neglect. In a back room, I found a small cot and a stack of children's books, Leo's favorites. My eyes welled up. Then, under the cot, I spotted a small wooden box. I opened it. Inside were more of Leo's drawings, but these were different. They showed a woman with grey hair, me, finding him, and the words, "Grandma will come." He'd never lost hope. But as I held the drawings, an engine rumbled outside. Peeking through a crack in the boards, I saw Michael's truck pulling up, and he wasn't alone. Vince was with him, and they were armed. I dropped to the floor, the wooden planks cold and gritty against my palms. Michael and Vince's voices carried through the walls, sharp and urgent. "She's here. I know it," Michael said, his boots crunching on the gravel outside. "Check the perimeter." I had to get out before they found me, but the only exit was the window I'd climbed through, now in their direct line of sight. My heart pounded like a trapped bird. If they caught me with Leo's drawings, I knew what they'd do. I was risking my own safety, and my relationship with my son was shattered beyond repair. I crawled toward the back of the room, where a threadbare rug lay bunched up. Underneath, I found a loose floorboard, a hiding spot. I shoved the wooden box with Leo's new drawings into my bag, then slid the board back into place. Just then, the front door rattled as someone tried the padlock. "It's secure," Vince called out. "Maybe she didn't come inside." Michael grunted. "Or she's still in there. Break it down." I heard the sound of metal scraping against metal. A crowbar, maybe. This was it. I was cornered. But as I pressed against the wall, my hand brushed against something cold, a metal latch on a panel I hadn't noticed. It led to a small crawl space, barely large enough to squeeze into. I pulled it open, the hinges squeaking softly, and slipped inside just as the front door splintered open. Darkness enveloped me, the air thick with dust. I could hear them stomping through the cabin, their flashlight beams slicing through the cracks. "Nothing here," Vince said, kicking over a chair. Michael's voice was low, furious. "She can't have gone far. We'll wait her out." Then his phone rang, and he answered, his tone shifting. "Yes, it's handled. The transfer is set for tonight." Transfer? What were they moving? Leo. My blood ran cold. As I inched deeper into the crawl space, my fingers closed around a small, familiar object, a child's sneaker covered in dirt. It was Leo's, from the day he vanished. A sudden realization hit me. He hadn't just been held here. He'd been moved, and recently. Just then, a beam of light suddenly pierced the darkness of the crawl space, and Vince's voice echoed, "Found something back here." The light swept over me, and I froze, clutching Leo's sneaker. Vince's face appeared in the opening, his eyes wide with surprise. "She's in here," he yelled. I scrambled backward, deeper into the crawl space, but it dead-ended into a solid wall. I was trapped. I needed to buy time, to somehow talk my way out or find a weapon. The emotional weight crushed me. My own son had brought me to this. Vince reached in, grabbing my ankle. I kicked hard, connecting with his jaw, and he recoiled with a curse. "She fights back," he snarled. Michael's voice came from behind him. "Enough of this. Mum, come out now. We can talk." His tone was deceptively calm, but I knew better. I needed a distraction. My hand closed around a loose brick in the crawl space wall. I heaved it, not at them, but at the opposite wall, creating a loud crash. "What was that?" Vince said, turning away for a second. In that moment, I noticed a narrow gap in the foundation, a way out to the outside, hidden by overgrown bushes. I squeezed through, scraping my arms and legs, and emerged into the cool night air behind the cabin. I could hear them arguing inside. "She's gone out the back," Michael shouted. I ran, not toward my car, but into the woods, using the trees for cover. The map in my bag had shown a river nearby. If I could reach it, I might throw them off my trail. Branches whipped at my face, and my breath came in ragged gasps. After a few minutes, I paused, listening. No footsteps yet. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Then a crackling sound from my bag. A small battery-powered radio I'd picked up in the cabin was emitting static, and then a voice. "Confirming the package is ready for transport at the old mill. ETA 1 hour." It was a frequency they were using. It dawned on me that they weren't just hiding the past. They were actively moving something now, and I had their schedule. But as I stood there, a twig snapped behind me, and Michael stepped out from behind a tree, his expression grim. "You shouldn't have run, Mom." I backed away, my hands raised. "Michael, what have you done with Leo?" I asked, my voice trembling. He shook his head, a sad smile on his face. You always were too curious for your own good. He took a step closer, and I noticed the gun holstered at his hip. I had to keep him talking, to learn where Leo was. But I was in grave danger, standing alone in the woods with a son I no longer knew. Why, Michael? He was your boy. His face hardened. He was a liability. He saw things, drew things. I had to protect us. Protect who? Him and Vince? The pressure was immense. Every second, Vince could be closing in. I edged toward a large oak tree, putting it between us. Where is he now? I demanded. Michael sighed. Safe. Far away from here. But you're ruining everything. Just then, a rustle in the bushes distracted him. Vince emerged, panting. Lost her trail. Oh, there she is. They were both here now, flanking me. I needed something to break the tension. I remembered the radio in my bag and turned up the volume, letting the static blare. What's that? Vince asked, confused. In that moment, I shouted, The police are on their way. I called them from the cabin. It was a bluff, but it worked. Michael's eyes darted toward the road. You're lying, he said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Check the radio, I insisted. They're monitoring this frequency. Vince pulled out his own device, fiddling with it. As he did, I spotted a fallen branch nearby, thick and heavy. I lunged for it, swinging it wildly to create space. Michael dodged, but Vince wasn't as quick. The branch caught him in the shoulder, and he stumbled back with a grunt. I didn't wait. I turned and ran deeper into the woods, toward the sound of rushing water. To my surprise, when I glanced back, I saw Michael not chasing me, but instead arguing with Vince, pointing back toward the cabin. He was more concerned about something there than catching me. I reached the riverbank, the water churning dark and fast. There was a small rowboat tied to a tree, maybe used by hunters. I untied it and pushed off, the current grabbing hold immediately. But as I drifted away, I saw headlights approaching on the road near the cabin. Not police cars, but 2 black SUVs. Men in dark uniforms got out, and Michael hurried to meet them. They weren't here for me. They were here for whatever was in that cabin, and I was floating right toward them. The current carried the rowboat downstream, closer to the cabin and the SUVs. I paddled frantically toward the opposite bank, my arms aching. I had to reach the other side and hide to understand what was happening. Those men in uniforms, were they part of this? I aimed to observe and escape, but I was risking the evidence in my bag, which felt heavier with each stroke. If I lost it, I lost everything. I made it to the far bank, pulling the boat into the reeds and crouching low. Through the trees, I could see Michael talking animatedly with one of the uniformed men. They were loading boxes from the cabin into the SUVs. What was in them? Money? Documents? Something to do with Leo? The pressure from Michael was overwhelming. He had resources I never imagined. I needed to get to the old mill from the radio transmission, but it was miles away. My phone had a weak signal now. 1 bar. I typed a quick text to my neighbour, Martha, asking her to call the police and send them to the old mill, but I didn't send it yet. I wanted to be sure. Just then, a voice crackled from my bag radio. Package secured. Proceeding to mill. It was now or never. I hit send on the text and started moving parallel to the river, staying hidden. After a few minutes, I heard engines starting. The SUVs were leaving. Michael and Vince got into one, driving off toward the main road. I was alone again, but for how long? I found a trail leading away from the river and followed it, my mind racing. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a small, hidden clearing with a fresh grave marker, a crude cross made of sticks with the name Leo carved into it. My heart stopped. Was this where they'd buried him? But no, the drawings showed him alive, hoping for rescue. I knelt, digging with my hands, but the earth was soft and recently turned. I uncovered not a body but a metal box. Inside, I found passports, cash, and a plane ticket for one. Michael, scheduled for a flight out of the country tonight. I realized he was planning to run, and this grave was a decoy. But why fake Leo's death? As I stood, a hand clamped over my mouth from behind, and a voice whispered, "Don't move, or you'll end up in that hole for real." I struggled, but the grip was too strong. It was Vince. He must have doubled back. He dragged me toward the trees, his breath hot on my neck. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" he snarled. I had to break free and get to the mill, where I might find Leo or stop whatever was happening. My life was on the line. I could feel it in his tense hold. He forced me to the ground, tying my hands with a rough rope. "Mike said to keep you here until it's over," he muttered, more to himself than to me. I lay still, pretending to be defeated, while my mind raced. The rope was tight, but I remembered the knife in my bag, which was strapped to my back. If I could roll over, maybe I could reach it. Vince paced nearby, talking on his phone. "Yeah, she's contained. Just finish the transfer and we're clear." Transfer? At the mill? I had to act now. I slowly shifted, inching my bound hands toward the bag's zipper. Vince wasn't watching. He was looking toward the road, expecting Michael. My fingers found the knife, and I sawed at the rope, the fibers giving way slowly. Just as the last strand snapped, Vince turned and saw me. "Hey!" he yelled, lunging. I rolled away, scrambling to my feet, knife in hand. "Stay back!" I shouted, my voice raw. He hesitated, eyeing the blade. "You're not going to use that," he said, but he didn't advance. I backed toward the trail, keeping him in sight. "Where's Leo?" I demanded. He laughed, a harsh sound. "You'll never find him. Mike made sure of that." But then, his expression changed, and he looked past me, toward the river. "What the—" I glanced back and saw lights flashing through the trees, police cars, finally responding to my text. The distraction gave me an opening. Vince was distracted. I didn't wait. I turned and ran down the trail toward the sound of the sirens. It struck me that the police weren't here for me. They were surrounding the cabin area, but the SUVs and Michael were gone. I reached the road, waving my arms, and an officer approached. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked. I started to explain, but then I saw it. In the distance, the old mill was silhouetted against the night sky, and a single light was on in an upper window. And in that window, a small figure waved, a child. Leo? But as I pointed, the light went out, and the figure vanished. I was left wondering, was it real, or a trick of the light? The officer followed my gaze, but the mill was dark and silent now. I gripped the officer's arm, my words tumbling out too fast. "There was a child in that window, the old mill. I saw him, the officer, a young man with a skeptical frown, peered toward the dark silhouette of the building. Ma'am, it's probably just shadows. This area's been abandoned for years." But I knew what I'd seen. That small, waving figure was burned into my mind. I had to get inside that mill to prove Leo was alive and end this nightmare. I was risking my credibility. If I was wrong, I'd look like a crazed old woman. But if I was right, every second counted. I showed him the drawings from my bag, the teddy bear, the sneaker. His expression shifted from doubt to cautious interest. "Wait here," he said, radioing for backup to check the mill. But as he spoke, a noise crackled from my bag, the radio I'd taken from the cabin. A voice, distorted but clear. "Abort. Abort. Cops on site. Move the package to the secondary location." My blood ran cold. They were moving Leo again. I couldn't wait for procedure. I had to act now. While the officer was distracted with his call, I slipped away, darting across the road and into the tall grass toward the mill. The night air was cool, but sweat trickled down my back. I reached the side of the building, finding a broken window covered by a loose board. I pried it open and climbed inside, landing on a concrete floor littered with debris. The interior was vast and echoing, smelling of damp and rot. I used my flashlight sparingly, scanning the space. Up ahead, a set of rickety stairs led to the upper level where I'd seen the figure. I started climbing, each step groaning under my weight. Suddenly, a door slammed somewhere below, and voices echoed. Michael and Vince were here. They'd come back for something. I froze on the stairs, my heart hammering. Then, a beam of light swept across the floor below, and I heard Michael say, "She's here somewhere. Find her." But as they spread out, a faint crying sound reached me from above, a child's sob. It was coming from the very room I was headed to. I pushed forward, reaching the top landing. The door to the room was ajar, and I pushed it open. Inside, on a dusty mattress, sat a boy with tangled hair, his back to me. "Leo?" I whispered. He turned, and it was him, older, thinner, but my grandson. His eyes widened in recognition, but before he could speak, a hand clamped over my mouth from behind, and Vince's voice growled, "Told you you'd regret this." Vince dragged me backward, his grip like iron. I struggled, but he was too strong. Leo watched, terrified, shrinking into the corner. I had to protect him, to get us both out of here. But Vince had a gun now, pressed against my side. The emotional weight was crushing. After finally seeing Leo, to be captured immediately felt unbearably cruel. "Michael!" Vince shouted. "I got her!" Footsteps pounded up the stairs, and Michael appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of cold fury. "Mom, you just couldn't let it go, could you?" he said, shaking his head. I needed to stall, to find a way to alert the police outside. I needed to protect Leo and reveal the truth, but it meant risking my own safety, and now his. Michael gestured to Vince. "Tie her up. We need to move fast. The cops are circling." Vince produced a zip tie and bound my wrists behind my back, then shoved me into a chair. Leo started crying softly. "Don't hurt her," he pleaded. Michael ignored him, pulling out a phone. "The transfer's compromised. We need the van now." I realized they were planning to take Leo somewhere else, to disappear him forever. I had to do something. My eyes scanned the room, landing on a loose pipe near the wall. If I could create a distraction. I rocked the chair, making it scrape loudly against the floor. "Quiet!" Vince snapped, stepping toward me. Just then, a siren wailed loudly outside, closer than before. The police were approaching the mill. Michael cursed. "Forget the van. We go out the back." He grabbed Leo's arm, but Leo pulled away, running to me. "Grandma!" he cried, clinging to my legs. Vince raised his hand to strike him, but I shouted, "Don't you touch him!" The sound echoed, and suddenly the door burst open. 2 officers stood there, guns drawn. "Freeze!" one yelled. In the confusion, Leo bit Michael's hand, and he recoiled with a curse. I used the moment to tip my chair over, crashing to the floor near the loose pipe. My hands scrambled, and I managed to grab it, swinging it at Vince's legs. He stumbled, dropping his gun. But as the officers moved in, Michael grabbed Leo and bolted out a back exit I hadn't noticed. Vince followed, and the officers gave chase. I was left on the floor, my wrists still bound, but I'd seen where they went. A hidden door behind a stack of sacks. And on the floor, where Leo had been sitting, was a small, folded paper. I kicked it toward me and unfolded it with my teeth. It was a drawing, fresh, of a boat on a lake, with the words, "He's taking me to the island." In a surprising turn, Leo was still leaving clues, even now. But as I read it, the radio in my bag crackled to life with Vince's voice. "She's still in there. Leave her. The place is rigged to burn." The word burn sent a jolt of terror through me. I had to get out now. The zip ties cut into my wrists, but I wriggled, trying to loosen them. I had to escape and follow that clue to the island, but every moment I delayed increased the danger. I could smell smoke already, acrid and thick, seeping under the door. The police were gone, chasing Michael and Vince, leaving me trapped. I rolled to the wall, using the rough surface to saw at the plastic ties. It was slow, painful work, but after a minute, they snapped. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing my bag and the drawing. The smoke was thickening, making me cough. I headed for the hidden door Michael had used, pushing it open to reveal a narrow staircase leading down. I descended into a basement, dark and damp, with a single exit, a metal door leading outside. But as I reached for the handle, I heard voices from the other side. "Make sure it's clear before we torch it," Vince said. They were still here. I backed away, looking for another way out. The basement was cluttered with old machinery, and in the corner I spotted a grate covering a drainage tunnel. I pried it open, the metal rusted and sharp. It was a tight fit, but I squeezed in, crawling into the cold, dark tunnel. The sound of flames crackled above, and heat pressed down. I moved as fast as I could, the tunnel sloping downward. After what felt like an eternity, I saw light ahead, an outlet into a drainage ditch near the river. I emerged, gasping for clean air, my clothes soaked and smeared with mud. The mill was fully engulfed in flames behind me, lighting up the night. I had to find that island from Leo's drawing. I pulled out the map from my bag. There was a lake with several islands about 10 miles north. But how would I get there? My car was still near the cabin, and the police might be looking for me. Then, I remembered the rowboat I'd used earlier. It might still be where I left it. I hurried along the riverbank, staying low. As I reached the spot, the boat was gone. But tied to a tree was a different, smaller canoe with an outboard motor. It had keys in the ignition. Was this left by Michael? This was unexpected. Why would they leave transportation? I hesitated, but time was critical. I climbed in, starting the motor. It purred to life. I set off upriver, following the map toward the lake. The night was quiet, save for the hum of the motor and the water slapping against the hull. After a while, I saw lights on the shore, a campsite with a few people gathered around a fire. As I passed, one of them stood and waved, and for a moment I thought it was Leo. But no, it was just a child with similar hair. I realized my hope was deceiving me. Then my radio buzzed. A new transmission. Package secured at the island, awaiting extraction at dawn. It was Michael's voice. I was on the right track. But as I rounded a bend, the motor sputtered and died. I was adrift in the dark, and in the distance I saw the silhouette of an island, with a single light flickering like a beacon. But then, another boat emerged from the shadows, heading straight for me, its spotlight blinding. The spotlight pinned me, and I squinted, raising a hand to shield my eyes. The boat was a sleek, dark speedboat, and as it pulled alongside, I saw Vince at the helm, a grim smile on his face. "Thought you'd give up by now," he said, cutting his engine. I had to get to that island, to find Leo before extraction, but now I was cornered on the water. I was risking my freedom, and possibly my life, if Vince decided to finish me. "Where's Michael?" I asked, stalling, my mind racing for an escape. Vince laughed. "Oh, he's busy with the boy. You're not going to ruin this for him." He tossed a rope, hooking it onto my canoe. "We're going for a little ride. I needed a distraction, something to break free." My eyes darted around. The river current was strong here, and the island wasn't far. If I could capsize the canoe or cause a collision. I pretended to comply, moving slowly as I reached into my bag for the knife. But Vince was watching me closely. "None of that," he said, pulling a gun. Just then, a fish jumped nearby, splashing loudly. Vince glanced away for a second, and I seized the moment, slashing the rope tethering me to his boat. I gunned the motor, but it was still dead. I'd forgotten. Panic surged, but then I remembered the oars stored under the seat. I grabbed one, paddling frantically toward the island. Vince shouted, starting his engine and giving chase. The spotlight swept over me, and I heard a warning shot into the water. My arms ached with the effort, but the island was getting closer. I could see a small dock now, with a figure standing on it. Michael, holding Leo by the hand. Leo saw me and started struggling, but Michael held him tight. I pushed harder, the canoe scraping onto the rocky shore. I stumbled out, my legs weak, and ran toward them. "Let him go, Michael!" I yelled. Michael shook his head. "It's too late, Mom. The boat's coming any minute." He pointed to the water, where a larger vessel was approaching from the distance. But then, Leo did something unexpected. He kicked Michael in the shin and broke free, running to me. "Grandma!" he cried, clinging to my legs. What did he mean by that? Was Michael not his real father? Before I could process it, Vince landed his boat and advanced, gun raised. "Enough games," he said. But as he took aim, a spotlight from the water swept over us. It was the police boat, finally here. Officers shouted through a megaphone to drop weapons. In the confusion, Michael grabbed a backpack from the dock and sprinted into the trees on the island. Vince followed, and the officers gave chase. I was left on the dock, my wrists still bound, but I'd seen where they went, a hidden door behind a stack of sacks, and on the floor, where Leo had been sitting, was a small folded paper. I kicked it toward me and unfolded it with my teeth. It was a drawing, fresh, of a boat on a lake, with the words, "He's taking me to the island." In a surprising turn, Leo was still leaving clues, even now. But as I read it, the radio in my bag crackled to life with Vince's voice. "She's still in there. Leave her. The place is rigged to burn." I pulled Leo behind me, shielding him as the large boat bore down on us. It wasn't slowing. It was aiming for the dock. I had to get us to safety and figure out Leo's mysterious words. But if we didn't move quickly, we could die. The police boat was closing in, but it was too far to help immediately. "Run!" I shouted, dragging Leo off the dock and into the trees lining the shore. We stumbled into the underbrush just as the boat crashed into the dock, splintering wood and sending debris flying. The impact threw us to the ground, but we were safe for the moment. Leo was trembling, his small hand gripping mine. "What did you mean? He's not your dad?" I asked softly, keeping low. Leo wiped his tears. "He told me my real dad died, and he took me to protect me. But he lied. I heard him talking. He sold me. Sold him? The word hit me like a physical blow. Michael wasn't just a kidnapper, he was a trafficker. The stakes were incredibly high. If this was true, the situation was far worse than I'd thought. We needed to hide until the police secured the area. I led Leo deeper into the island, which was small and densely wooded. We found a hollow under a large fallen tree and crouched there, listening. Shouts and engine sounds echoed from the water. The police were engaging with the large boat. Then, gunshots rang out, followed by silence. After a few minutes, an officer's voice called out, "Coast clear? Anyone here?" I hesitated, but Leo stood up. "We're here," he yelled. Two officers approached, their flashlights cutting through the dark. "Mom, are you and the boy all right?" one asked. I nodded, relief flooding me. "My son, Michael. He's on the island somewhere." The officer radioed it in. "We have teams sweeping the area. Let's get you to safety." They led us to a police boat, and as we boarded, I saw agents detaining Vince near the shore. He'd been caught, but Michael was still missing. On the boat, Leo clung to me, whispering, "He has a cave here, where he hides things." I told the officers, and they redirected the search. As we motored away from the island, I held Leo close, feeling a fragile hope. But then, my radio, still in my bag, crackled with a familiar voice. Michael's, faint but clear. "You think you've won, Mom? I have one more card to play. Check your phone." I fumbled for it, and a text lit up the screen. A photo of my house with the words, "I left a present for you." To my horror, he'd booby-trapped my home. As I stared, the phone rang. It was my neighbor, Martha, her voice frantic. "Eleanor, you need to come home now. There's smoke coming from your basement." I gripped Leo's hand, my heart seizing at Martha's frantic call. Smoke in my basement. Michael's present was a fire. I had to get there immediately to save my home and the evidence I'd hidden. But every second wasted risked everything going up in flames. The police boat sped toward the shore, officers radioing ahead for fire crews. Leo clung to me, his small body trembling. "Is he going to burn our house?" he whispered. I nodded, my throat tight. Losing that house meant losing years of memories and the physical proof of Michael's crimes. And the impact was immense. As we docked, an officer drove us toward my neighborhood, sirens blaring. I felt suffocated by Michael's actions. He was striking back from the shadows, proving he still had control. We arrived to chaos, flames licking from the basement windows, firefighters battling the blaze. Martha rushed over, her face pale. "I called as soon as I saw the smoke," she said. I pushed forward, but a firefighter stopped me. "Ma'am, it's not safe." Then I remembered. The evidence box was in the basement, near the furnace where Michael knew I kept it. He'd targeted it specifically. As I watched, a window shattered from the heat and a burst of flame shot out. But in that moment, my phone buzzed. A new text from Michael. "Too late for the house, but check the garage. You'll want to see this." Why the garage? It was detached, untouched by the fire. I broke away, dodging firefighters, and ran to the small garage, Leo and an officer following. Inside, amid gardening tools, was a large, locked trunk I hadn't opened in years. The key from the cabin fit perfectly. I lifted the lid, and my breath caught. It was filled with stacks of cash, passports, and a ledger detailing payments for transfers of children. Leo's name was there, with a date matching his disappearance. Michael wasn't just involved, he was running a ring. But as I stared, the garage door suddenly slammed shut behind us, and the lock clicked from the outside. We were trapped, and through the small window, I saw a figure slipping away into the night. Michael, watching us. The garage was pitch dark, the air thick with dust and the smell of gasoline. I fumbled for my phone, using its light to scan the space. Leo pressed against me, his breathing shallow. "Is he out there?" he asked. I had to get us out and secure this new evidence, to expose the trafficking ring and protect Leo. But being trapped here meant Michael could escape, or worse. I rattled the door, but it was solidly locked. The officer with us drew his weapon, radioing for backup, but the signal was weak. "They're on their way," he said, but his voice lacked confidence. If I failed, the consequences were unthinkable. Leo would be back in danger, and the proof lost. I noticed a high window near the roof, too small for an adult, but maybe for Leo. "Can you climb?" I asked him, pointing. He nodded, his eyes wide. I boosted him onto a shelf, and he wriggled through, dropping outside. A moment later, the lock clicked, and the door swung open. Leo had freed us. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As we stepped out, fire crews were containing the basement blaze, but the house was damaged. An investigator approached, holding a small device, a remote trigger for the fire. "It was arson, Ma'am," he said. I showed him the trunk contents, and his expression turned grim. "We need to get this to the station immediately." But as we loaded the trunk into a police car, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered, and Michael's voice, cold and calm, said, "You found my savings. But you missed the best part. Check the ledger's back page." I hung up and flipped through the book. On the last page was a list of names with photos, other missing children, and next to Leo's, a note. "Asset transferred to new handler." My blood ran cold. Leo wasn't the only one. There were more. And Michael had handed him off to someone else. But Leo was right here with me. Then I realized the drawing Leo left on the island, the one about the boat. It wasn't about the past. It was a warning about the future. Leo tugged my sleeve. "Grandma, that man in the photo, he's the one who took me before." He pointed to a face in the ledger I hadn't noticed. A man I'd never seen, with a scar over his eye. The police were mobilizing, but as they did, a van screeched to a halt down the street, and men in masks jumped out, heading straight for us. The masked men advanced, and the officer shoved me and Leo behind a patrol car. "Get down!" he yelled, drawing his gun. Shots rang out, and I covered Leo's ears, my heart pounding. I had to protect him and the evidence, but these men were here for both. The trunk was still in the open police car, vulnerable. In this fight, our safety was at stake. We were exposed in the street. The fire crews ducked for cover, and more police units arrived, engaging the attackers. In the chaos, I spotted the van's license plate. It matched one from Leo's drawings, the one from years ago. These were Michael's associates, here to retrieve the ledger and Leo. I needed to get us to safety, but the street was a war zone. Leo clutched my arm, pointing to the backyard. "There's a shed with a lock," he whispered. "We can hide." We crawled along the hedge, staying low, and reached the small garden shed. I unlocked it with a key from my ring, and we slipped inside, pulling the door shut. It was dark and cramped, smelling of fertilizer and old wood. Through a crack, I watched the shootout. The masked men were retreating, one grabbing the trunk from the police car before speeding off in the van. They'd gotten the evidence. Despair washed over me, but then I remembered. I'd taken photos of the ledger pages with my phone earlier. Not all was lost. But as I checked my phone, a new message popped up from Michael. "Clever. But now I have your attention. Meet me at the old train depot in 1 hour, alone, or the next child on the list disappears tonight. He was using another child as leverage. I felt unbearable pressure. I had to decide between saving Leo or an unknown victim. Leo looked at me, his eyes filled with trust. "What do we do, Grandma?" I knew I couldn't involve the police directly. Michael would know. But I had a plan. I'd go, but not alone. I texted Martha, asking her to alert the police discreetly and watch Leo. Then I noticed something in the shed. An old ham radio set I'd forgotten, still powered. I tuned it to the frequency from earlier and caught a transmission. Package retrieved. Depot at 2300. It was the same time. But as I listened, a voice added, "And bring the woman. She's the key." "Why me?" Then Leo spoke up, his voice small. "Grandma, I think I know why. He needs you to access something, a safe or an account. He told me once. Only Grandma can open it." What could that be? I never had any joint accounts with Michael, unless it was something from my past, something I'd forgotten. The clock was ticking, and as I stepped out to leave, a hand grabbed my shoulder from the shadows. It was Vince, escaped and bleeding, his eyes wild. "Don't go, Eleanor. It's a trap. He's not alone. He's with the handler." Vince slumped against the shed, clutching a wound on his side. "They left me for dead," he gasped. "Michael's with the scarred man. His name is Silas. They're at the depot, but it's wired to blow if you're not alone." I had to decide quickly, trust Vince or ignore him. I wanted to save the other child and stop Michael, but Vince's sudden appearance changed everything. If I misjudged the situation, it could be fatal. Leo peered out, wary. "He's lying, Grandma," he whispered. But Vince shook his head. "I'm not. I want out. Check my pocket. There's a phone with proof." I hesitated, then reached into his jacket, finding a burner phone. On it, a video showed Michael and Silas discussing the transfer of a boy named Sam, scheduled for tonight. The depot was a diversion. The real exchange was at a warehouse across town. Vince coughed. "They're using you as a distraction. If you go to the depot, they'll have time to move Sam." The pressure felt immense. I had to split my efforts or make a choice. I made a call. I'd send the police to the warehouse anonymously using Vince's phone, while I went to the depot to keep Michael occupied. It was risky, but it might save both. I helped Vince to his feet and handed him over to Martha, who'd arrived with Leo's bag. "Keep him safe," I told her. Then I drove toward the train depot, an abandoned structure on the city's edge. The night was silent, too silent. As I parked, I saw no one, but a light flickered in the main building. I entered, my footsteps echoing in the vast space. Michael stood alone in the center, a smirk on his face. "You came?" he said. "Where's Silas?" I demanded. He laughed. "Oh, he's busy. But you're right on time for the show." He gestured to a monitor propped on a crate. It showed live footage of the warehouse, where police were swarming, and Silas was being arrested. Michael's smile faded. "You ruined it." But then, he pulled a remote from his pocket. "This depot is rigged with explosives. If I press this, it all goes up, with us inside." I backed away, but he advanced. "Why, Michael? Why all this?" He sighed. "Money, Mom. It was always money. Leo was just a commodity." His words cut deep, but then a noise came from above, a creak in the rafters. Michael looked up, distracted, and in that moment I lunged, grabbing for the remote. We struggled, and it clattered to the floor, but as I reached for it, a figure dropped from the ceiling. It was Leo, who must have followed me. He snatched the remote and threw it into a dark corner. Michael roared in anger, turning on him. But then, police burst in, guns drawn. Michael raised his hands, but his eyes locked on me with pure hatred. As they cuffed him, he whispered, "You think it's over? Silas was small time. The real boss is still out there, and he knows you now." The officers led him away, but his words hung in the air. I hugged Leo, relief mixing with dread. Then, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You have something of mine. I'll be in touch." Attached was a photo of Leo, taken hours ago. I held Leo tight, the message chilling me to the bone. Someone else was involved, someone higher up, and they had eyes on us. I had to get Leo to absolute safety, to a place where no one could find him. The police secured the depot, but Michael's warning echoed. The real boss was still out there. Any misstep now could cost Leo's life. I spoke with the lead investigator, urging them to place us in protective custody. He agreed, arranging for a safe house outside the city. As we were driven away, Leo fell asleep against me, exhausted. I reviewed the photos on my phone, the ledger, the faces, the evidence. But one thing nagged me. Why did Michael say only I could open something? Back at the station, while giving my statement, I asked about any accounts or safes linked to me. An officer checked and found nothing. Then, I remembered, years ago, my husband, before he died, set up a safety deposit box at a local bank. I'd forgotten about it. He said it was for emergencies. Could that be it? I had the key in my jewelry box at home, but the house was damaged. With police escort, we returned to grab it. The basement was charred, but my bedroom was intact. I found the key, a small brass one, and we went to the bank. Inside the box, under old documents, was a single envelope. I opened it. Inside was a birth certificate for Leo, but with a different father's name, a man named James Corbin, and a note from my husband. "If anything happens, Leo is not Michael's. He's from a surrogate, to protect him from my family's debts. I'm sorry." My hands trembled. Leo wasn't Michael's biological son. That's why Michael treated him as a commodity. But who was James Corbin? A quick search on my phone showed he was a wealthy businessman with ties to organized crime, the real boss Michael mentioned. Leo was a target because of his lineage. I had to disappear with Leo to break all ties. The police helped set up new identities, and we prepared to leave that night. But as we packed a bag, a car pulled up outside the safe house, a black sedan with tinted windows. A man in a suit got out, holding a folder. He approached the door, and through the peephole I saw his face. It was James Corbin, from the photo in the ledger. He knocked politely, and my phone buzzed with a new message. "Open the door, Eleanor. We need to talk about my son." Leo looked at me, confused. "Who is that, Grandma?" I backed away, my mind racing. How did he find us so fast? Then, I noticed a tracking device stuck to the bottom of Leo's shoe, planted during the chaos earlier. We were never safe. I ripped the tracking device from Leo's shoe just as James Corbin knocked again, his voice calm through the door. "Eleanor, I know you're in there. Let's talk about Leo." My heart hammered against my ribs. I had to get us out of this safe house immediately before his men surrounded us. Leo clutched my hand, his eyes wide with fear. I scanned the room for an escape, a back door or window. Failing now was unthinkable. Losing Leo would destroy me after all we'd been through. James's presence meant he had resources far beyond Michael's, and he wanted his son back for reasons I couldn't fathom. I edged toward the kitchen, pulling Leo with me, and spotted a rear exit leading to a small alley. But as I reached for the knob, a shadow moved outside the window. Another man was posted there. We were trapped. Just then, My phone vibrated with a text from the lead investigator. "Stay put. Backup is 5 minutes out." But 5 minutes was too long. James's knocking grew more insistent. "I have an offer for you, Eleanor. A way to keep Leo safe." His words were smooth, but I didn't trust them. I needed a distraction. I grabbed a vase from the table and threw it against the far wall. The crash echoed through the house. For a moment, the knocking stopped, and I heard James mutter something to his companion. In that pause, I noticed the air vent near the floor, large enough for Leo to crawl through, leading to the next room. "Quick, Leo. Get in there and hide," I whispered, helping him squeeze in. As he disappeared, I turned back to the door, my mind racing. James called out, "Enough games? Open up, or I'll have no choice but to force my way in." I took a deep breath and unlocked the door, stepping back as James entered, his suit impeccable, his eyes cold. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Where's the boy?" he asked. I stood my ground. "He's safe. Why do you want him?" James sighed. "He's my heir, Eleanor. I need him to take over the family business. Michael was supposed to deliver him to me years ago, but he got greedy and tried to sell him elsewhere." The revelation hit me. Leo was a pawn in a power struggle. But then James's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression shifting to annoyance. "It seems your police friends are early." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. James stepped closer, his voice low. "This isn't over. I have people everywhere." He turned and left, slipping out the back, just as police cars screeched to a halt outside. Officers rushed in, and I pointed them toward the alley, but James was gone. I pulled Leo from the vent, holding him tight. As the police secured the area, one officer handed me a note found on the doorstep. It was from James, written in elegant script. "You can't hide him forever. I'll be watching." But as I read it, Leo tugged my sleeve and pointed to my phone, where a new message had arrived, a photo of Martha's house with the words, "Say goodbye to your friend." I showed the message to the officers, and they immediately dispatched a unit to Martha's house. Leo and I were rushed to a new, more secure location, a remote cabin owned by the police department. I had to ensure Martha's safety and protect Leo from James's reach, but the emotional toll was mounting. Every move felt like a step deeper into a nightmare. The cabin was sparse, but fortified, with an officer stationed outside. Leo sat on the couch, drawing quietly, while I paced, my mind replaying James's words. Why was Leo so important to him? The ledger photos on my phone showed other children, but Leo was singled out. I needed to understand James's motives to end this permanently. I called the investigator, asking for any files on James Corbin. While waiting, I noticed Leo's drawing. It depicted a man with a crown handing a key to a boy. "What's this, sweetie?" I asked. Leo looked up. "That's the bad man. He said I have to open a special box for him." "A box? Like the safety deposit box?" But that only had the birth certificate. Unless there was more. James's relentless pressure had infiltrated our safe house and now threatened Martha. My phone rang. It was Martha, her voice shaky but relieved. "The police got here in time, Eleanor. Someone tried to break in, but they fled. Are you and Leo okay?" I assured her we were safe, but the close call terrified me. James knew all our connections. Just then, the investigator called back. "James Corbin is the head of a syndicate involved in trafficking and money laundering. He needs Leo to access a trust fund set up by your husband. It's worth millions, and Leo is the only beneficiary who can unlock it after a certain age." That must be what Michael meant by, "Only grandma can open it." I had the guardianship papers. But Leo was just a child. I had to use this knowledge to trap James. I proposed a plan to the police, set up a meeting, offer the access in exchange for Leo's safety and the end of his operations. They agreed, but warned it was dangerous. As we prepared, Leo finished his drawing and handed it to me. I remember now, Grandma. The bad man has a big house with a red door. I saw it when Michael took me. He described a mansion on a hill, and I realized it matched an estate owned by Corbin Enterprises. We had a location. But as I relayed this to the police, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I answered, and James's voice came through, cold and precise. I see you're moving again. Let's make a deal. Meet me at the estate tonight, bring Leo, and I'll call off my men. Otherwise, Martha won't be so lucky next time. He hung up, and a photo followed. Martha walking her dog, unaware she was being watched. The police advised against going, but I knew I had to end this. We arranged for a covert team to surround the estate. As we drove toward the meeting point, Leo slept in the back seat, and I felt a grim determination. But when we arrived, the estate was dark and silent, no guards in sight. We stepped out, and the front door creaked open automatically. Inside, the foyer was empty, but a single light shone from a room down the hall. As we approached, a recorded voice played from hidden speakers. "Welcome, Eleanor. Let's begin." Then, the door behind us slammed shut, and the lights went out, plunging us into darkness. I gripped Leo's hand, my other hand fumbling for the flashlight on my phone. The beam cut through the blackness, revealing an opulent but empty hallway. We were trapped inside James's estate, and I had to find a way out or turn this into an opportunity to confront him. Leo trembled beside me, his small fingers clutching mine. "I'm scared, Grandma," he whispered. I reassured him, but my own fear was a cold knot in my stomach. If James captured us here, he could disappear with Leo forever. This gamble could cost us our freedom, or even our lives. I led Leo toward the room where the light had been, hoping to find answers. The door was ajar, and inside was a study, filled with books and a large desk. On the desk lay a folder labeled Leo Corbin, Trust Fund. I opened it. Documents detailed a massive inheritance, accessible only with my signature as guardian and Leo's presence after his next birthday. James needed us both to get the money. But why go through all this? Why not just force me? Then I noticed a photograph tucked inside, a younger James with my husband, smiling together. They were friends once? The pressure intensified. James's voice came from an intercom on the wall. "I see you found the papers, Eleanor. Sign them and I'll let you both go. Refuse, and, well, you've seen what I can do." His tone was reasonable, but it was a trap. I needed to disrupt his momentum. I pretended to consider, moving to the desk and picking up a pen. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" I asked, stalling. Leo tugged my arm and pointed to a vent near the floor. It was loose. He mouthed, "I can fit." It was risky, but if he could get out and alert the police outside. I nodded subtly, and he started to crawl in just as James replied, "You have my word as a gentleman." But then, footsteps echoed in the hall, approaching quickly. I dropped the pen and backed away, but the study door swung open, and James stood there, not alone. Vince was with him, looking battered but loyal. James smiled. "Where's the boy?" he asked, his eyes scanning the room. I stood my ground. "Gone? The police have him." James's smile faded. "You lie." He gestured to Vince, who moved toward me. But then, a crash came from outside the window. The police team was breaching the perimeter. James cursed, pulling a gun. "We're leaving. Now." He grabbed my arm, but I resisted. In the struggle, Vince hesitated, his eyes on me. "Boss, this is getting messy," he said. James glared at him. "Don't weaken now." But Vince shook his head. "I'm out." He turned and ran, leaving James stunned. In that moment, I kicked James's knee, and he stumbled, dropping the gun. I scooped it up, aiming it at him. "It's over, James." He laughed, a harsh sound. "Is it?" Then, Leo's voice came from the intercom. He had reached a control room somewhere. "Grandma, I found something. He has other kids here in the basement." James's face paled. "No one knows about that." But as he spoke, police burst into the room, subduing him. As they cuffed him, he looked at me with pure hatred. "You've ruined everything." But then, an officer radioed in. The basement was empty, no children found. Leo came running in, confused. "I saw them on the cameras, I swear." James smirked. "The cameras are old footage, dear boy. A diversion." But as he was led away, I noticed a strange symbol on his cufflink, a twisted tree. It matched a drawing Leo had made years ago. There was a subtle but crucial detail. James had been involved from the very beginning, even before Leo disappeared. But just as we were leaving the estate, my phone rang with a call from the investigator, and I knew something wasn't over. "Eleanor, we found something in Corbyn's records, a reference to a Project Phoenix, and your name listed as a key participant. What do you know about this?" I stood frozen, the investigator's words echoing in my mind. Project Phoenix? My name? I had no idea what it meant, but it sent a chill down my spine. Leo and I were escorted back to police protection, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. I needed to uncover the truth about Project Phoenix and clear my name, but delving deeper risked unearthing secrets that could shatter what little peace we had. It was eroding my sanity. Each new discovery felt like another blow. At the safe house, I asked the police for access to Corbyn's seized records. They provided a tablet with scanned documents, and I spent hours scrolling through, Leo asleep beside me. Most of it was financial, but then I found a folder labeled Phoenix. Inside were plans for a new trafficking network, with my husband's signature on several pages as a consultant. My stomach dropped. Had my husband been involved? But that didn't make sense. He was a kind man, or so I thought. The pressure was immense. If this got out, our family's legacy would be destroyed, and Leo might be taken from me. I needed to talk to someone who knew the truth. I remembered an old friend of my husband's, Ben, who worked in law enforcement before retiring. I called him, and after some hesitation, he agreed to meet. The police arranged a secure video call. Ben's face appeared, weary and aged. "Eleanor, I hoped you'd never have to hear about this," he said. "Project Phoenix was a covert operation your husband and I worked on to infiltrate Corbyn's ring. But it went wrong. Your husband was killed because of it, and Corbyn covered it up. James blamed your husband for betraying him, and he's been targeting your family ever since." The pieces fell into place. Leo was a target because James believed he was the key to accessing funds, or as revenge. But why wait so long? Ben sighed. James needed Leo to reach a certain age for the trust, and he used Michael to get close. But Michael got greedy. I thanked Ben and ended the call, my mind reeling. I had to ensure James could never threaten us again. The police assured me he was in custody, facing multiple charges. But as I relaxed slightly, Leo woke up and showed me another drawing, a man with a briefcase handing money to a police officer. "I saw that man here, Grandma," he said, pointing to the officer stationed outside our door. My blood ran cold. Was there a mole in the police? I discreetly informed the lead investigator, and he had the officer replaced. But the trust was broken. We were moved again to a high-security facility. As we settled in, I received a package from James, sent before his arrest. It contained a locket with a photo of my husband and a note. "He wasn't the saint you think. Ask about the fire." The fire? My mind flashed to a house fire years ago that was ruled an accident. Had it been arson? I pushed the thought away for now, focusing on Leo. But that night, as I tried to sleep, a news alert popped up on my phone. James Corbin had escaped custody during a transfer. The report mentioned an inside job. Leo stirred, sensing my tension. "Is he coming back, Grandma?" I hugged him close, my heart pounding. "I won't let him hurt you," I whispered. But as I said it, the lights in our room flickered and went out, and a soft click came from the door. It was unlocking from the outside. The door eased open, and I shielded Leo, ready to fight. But it was the lead investigator, his face grim in the glow of his flashlight. "We have to move you. Corbin's men are nearby, and we've lost communication with the perimeter." My relief was short-lived. The danger was still imminent. I gathered Leo, and we followed him through dark corridors to an armoured vehicle. As we drove through the night, I realised this had to end now, for good. I needed to draw James out and finish this, but it meant risking everything for a chance at peace. Putting our safety at risk was daunting, but the only other option was to hide forever. We arrived at a secluded farmhouse, the last safe location on their list. Inside, it was cozy but secure, with officers posted outside. Leo fell asleep on a couch, exhausted. I sat with the investigator, reviewing the plan. We'd use the trust fund papers as bait, setting a trap for James when he inevitably came for them. But I had a different idea. I wanted to use the locket and the fire memory. I called Ben again and asked about the fire. He confirmed it was set by James to destroy evidence against him, and my husband had died trying to stop it. The locket was a taunt. I decided to record a message, admitting I knew the truth and offering to meet James alone at the site of the old fire, our former family home, now ruins. The police agreed, with snipers in place. At dawn, I went to the ruins, leaving Leo safe with trusted officers. The air was cool, and the scorched beams stood like skeletons against the sky. James arrived alone, as promised, his hands empty. "You're brave, Eleanor," he said, "but foolish." I held up the locket. "I know what you did. It ends today." He smiled. "Does it? I have men ready to take Leo if I don't return." But then, Leo's voice came from a police speaker. He was safe, and James's men had been arrested. James's confidence cracked. "You win," he spat. But as he moved toward me, a shot rang out. A sniper took him down. He fell, and it was over. Back at the farmhouse, I held Leo, feeling a quiet relief. The police ensured all loose ends were tied, the syndicate was dismantled, and Leo was safe. We decided to leave the past behind, moving to a small town under new names. Years later, Leo grew up free from shadows, and I found peace in watching him thrive, the wounds of the past slowly healing in the light of a new beginning.